The miracle doctor won't be a kept man. My heart belongs ashore. Chapter 641. Kiran York wanted to not only destroy the Lions Club, but to strike such fear into its members that they would seek him out. This would flush out more people from the Imperial Dragon. This was the reason behind his 7-day challenge. Just as Max Yates seemed eager for an immediate confrontation, Kiran had no such intention. While looking for ways to delay unexpectedly, Cliff Locker, clearly seeking a confrontation, stepped forward. Kiran's decisive beating of Cliff served as a stern warning to Max Yates and the others. They were no match for him, merely heading towards their doom. No one wishes to die, and Max Yates was no exception. He, of course, would want to survive the next 4 days. And Kiran, having thrashed Cliff, knew the man would surely seek reinforcements, leading to more members of the Lions Club showing up. Kiran turned to Cliff. Now that Max Yates isn't keen on a duel today, how about you step up? Cliff's words hung in the air, swallowed back at the last moment. His energy was in disarray from Kiran's sudden attack. Facing Kiran now would likely result in a swift defeat like a weak chicken. Kiran York, you ambushed me. That's the only reason my energy is scattered. Otherwise, I'd have every confidence in killing you. So, you're saying you'd like to wait until you've recovered, is that it? If I were back to full strength, I could easily kill you. That can be easily arranged, Kiran said with a smile, stepping forward. What are you going to do? Help you regain your energy. As Kiran finished speaking, he raised his hand, and his silver needle pierced Cliff, their force entering his body and beginning to restore his scattered energy. Swoo. Kiran raised his hand again, and the silver needle flew back to him. Now that your energy is restored, make your move, Kiran urged. Cliff's energy had indeed returned to normal, but his anger surged higher with each passing moment. He was on the verge of collapse. Kiran had humiliated him by beating him, and now, by restoring his energy and coaxing him to attack, made him feel even more humiliated. The idea of striking now seemed like an even greater disgrace. Make your move, Kiran coaxed with a smile. Don't leave the Lions Club members waiting in vain, and certainly don't disappoint them. Cliff found himself at a loss for words. Do you dare to strike or don't you? Kiran challenged with a cold laugh. At this moment, Cliff felt as if he was stripped naked for all to see, losing all dignity in front of Max Yates and the others. Earlier, he had been full of authority, commanding others to kill Kiran and presenting himself as a lofty leader. Now he couldn't bring himself to move. Swallowed by frustration and helplessness, he remained silent. Lost your voice? Kiran scoffed. Since you don't wish to speak, perhaps you'd prefer never to speak again. Kiran walked towards Cliff, his gaze cold as he reached for the silver needles, aiming for Cliff's mouth. Feeling like prey under a predator's gaze, Cliff hastily exclaimed, I'm scared, boom! His admission shocked everyone present, shattering the illusions of many, especially the ordinary disciples who felt a desperate urge to cry out in despair. Kiran York was too terrifying. Even Max Yates took a deep breath, surprised by the turn of events. Only Faber Luther remained composed, knowing Kiran York to be an extraordinary figure. This was all expected, so, do we duel now or in 4 days? Kiran taunted Cliff. 4 days later. Cliff managed to choke out the words, the humiliation unbearable, yet he dared not disagree. Kiran turned to Max Yates and the others. Congratulations, you've earned a few more days. He then turned and left, as calm and composed as when he arrived, but his departure left everyone utterly terrorized, stripping them of any confidence in facing him. This Kiran York. Too terrifying. Are we really going to our deaths in 4 days? Many were shaken with fear, some already planning their escape. Cliff, with his pride shattered and anger boiling over, was more determined than ever to kill Kiran. Kiran York, I will find someone who can kill you. Kiran, serene as ever, took Cliff's threats as no more than the barking of a dog. Whether such a person existed, he did not know, but he was certainly intrigued. You all are worthless. Cliff, ignored by Kiran, could only vent his fury on Max Yates and the others. Yet to those he berated, his words meant nothing. They did not see themselves as worthless. After all, the real worthless one had already surrendered, Cliff Locker himself. Drowned in the stares of the others, Cliff found himself utterly without honor. Standing up, he fled. He immediately called Lillian Yanis, begging her to come to Fox and kill Kiran York. When Lillian received the call, her expression turned icy, surprised that Cliff would resort to asking for her help. She knew of Kiran's activities in Fox and guessed that the matter had blown up. She looked towards Snow Xander. How about we go to Fox and check on your husband? Absolutely, Snow replied, a smile lighting up her face. Lately, with Kiran away, Lillian had been by Snow's side around the clock, ensuring her protection. Snow considered Lillian a truly caring sister, though Lillian herself couldn't fathom why she was going to such lengths. Quickly, the two women prepared to leave for Fox. Snow even brought along an investment proposal, planning to look into opportunities in Fox. Meanwhile, Lillian pondered how this situation would resolve itself. Unknown to Kiran, his dearly missed wife was soon to arrive. He casually went about his day visiting Sawyer Sinfield's home, where 3 people were still unconscious, though their conditions had stabilized. Father Larson's recovery was progressing well, his gratitude and admiration for Kiran growing. Healing Elder, acting like a diligent student, was eager to learn and assist in caring for the 3 patients, giving Kiran peace of mind. After imparting some guidance to both of them, Kiran left. His phone rang. It was Shuri Caden calling. "What's up?" Kiran answered. "Rory Yates is bringing a foreigner to treat me," Shuri reported, her tone a mix of amusement and disbelief. "Did Brandt show up?" Kiran chuckled. "Yes, Brandt, Rory's mentor from the university. And that foreigner doesn't trust the medical scans from Fox City Hospital. He says there's a mistake." "Where are they now?" "At the company. Tell them to wait for me." Kiran hung up and hailed a cab to Mysticor Enterprise. In the reception room of Mysticor Enterprise, Brandt, a tall man with blue eyes and a high-nosed bridge, scrutinized some medical images. Pointing at shadows in the brain, he declared, "Even the world's most miraculous medicine couldn't make a tumor disappear instantly." "Teacher, I've been deceived," Rory Yates confessed to the white man before him, full of self-reproach. Turning to Shuri, Brandt insisted, "Miss Caden, these images must be fake. You've truly been deceived." Standing tall, Rory Yates faced Shuri. "Shuri, I told you that man was a fraud." Just as Shuri, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and anger, was about to speak. "The liar has arrived," Kiran's voice, coupled with the opening door, resonated through the room. Chapter 642. Rory Yates leaped from his seat, pointing a finger at Kiran with his left hand while shaking the medical images in his right. "You, the great scammer, dare to admit you're a fraud?" he accused furiously. "You conspired with Dr. Huang to deceive me, all for the sake of winning over Shuri, you sly villain." Still smarting from the previous day's humiliation, Rory was seething with rage. He had immediately reached out to his mentor, Brandt, fearing he wouldn't come. Yet, to his surprise and bolstering his confidence, Brandt came. However, Kiran remained unfazed, raising an eyebrow. "Rory Yates, you've got it all wrong." "What did I get wrong?" "I was calling you the scammer." "Me?" Rory sounded as though he was hearing things in a dream. Kiran nodded. "Yes, you're a scammer in love. What the hell are you talking about?" "What have I scammed you of?" Rory, feeling embarrassed in front of Shuri, demanded angrily. "You professed your love to Shuri yesterday, swearing eternal devotion, only to back out upon learning she has a brain tumor. And then you turned your attention to my friend, Yvonne Quinn. You really have no shame." "You are making things up," Rory retorted, infuriated and embarrassed as Kiran disclosed yesterday's events before Shuri. "Whether I'm making it up or not, many saw what happened. Everyone knows," Kiran scoffed dismissively. Even if what you said is true, how do you explain this illness?" Rory, unwilling to let go, still sought to use the illness to undermine Kiran and salvage his dignity. "What about the illness?" Kiran asked, seemingly indifferent. "It's impossible for 2 sets of medical images of Shuri's head to show up in such a short span of time, meaning she was never sick." "You're just lying," Rory argued, shaking the images with apparent fear. "These images are mine, all real." Shuri, somewhat agitated, interjected. "I do have a brain tumor, and the pain has been frequent. I knew it, and now it's gone." Without prior examinations for a brain tumor and only aware of her pain, Shuri now decided she had one to side with Kiran and dismiss Rory, the undeserving man. Refusing to believe, Rory pointed to Brandt. "Kiran, I've brought my teacher Brandt here today. I don't need to introduce his reputation." Then, turning to Shuri, "Shuri, even if you doubt my medical skills, surely you can't doubt my teacher Brandt's abilities?" Shuri found herself at a loss for words. Brandt's medical prowess was legendary and revered by many. She couldn't falsely accuse him against her conscience. Seeing Shuri speechless, Rory's confidence soared. "Now you must believe that Kiran York was lying," he stated with cold arrogance, glaring at Kiran. "You're trying to win over Shuri by slandering me. What a despicable man." "Shuri, you can't be fooled by this lowlife," Rory huffed, posing as if he were the righteous one. Kiran's gaze briefly flitted across Brandt's face, and he couldn't help but let out a snort of laughter. "What are you laughing at?" Rory demanded, feeling Kiran was being disrespectful to his teacher. "I'm laughing at your teacher, who is more eager than you are to know the truth." What do you mean? Rory was puzzled. Kiran didn't explain, but instead looked towards Brandt. Brandt, addressing Kiran in a stiff Dragon's Land accent that sounded awkward but filled with hope and joy hard to disguise, asked, You really cured the brain tumor? Kiran smiled lightly. I'm a scammer. Brandt's expression changed dramatically, his eyes shining with excitement. Ha ha. Rory laughed loudly. Shuri, did you hear that? Kiran York just admitted again he's a scammer. Now you believe it, right? Shuri, unsure of Kiran's intentions, looked astonished, her cheeks flushing. Teacher, don't bother with this scammer. Now let's prove that real medical skill is. Shut up! Brandt suddenly cut him off, standing up to face Kiran directly. Mr. York, can you really do it? Brandt's tone was excited yet respectful. His cheeks reddened as if overwhelmed by complex emotions. Kiran remained silent with a smile. Confused and dishonored, Rory protested loudly. Teacher, what are you doing? Do you mean to believe a scammer? Slap. Brandt slapped Rory across the face. Shut up! Holding his sore cheek, Rory looked at Brandt in utter disbelief, as if he was in a dream. Teacher, I'm your student. Why are you hitting me? Brandt looked at him with a fierce and angry face. The thing I regret most in my life is accepting a worthless disciple like you, ruining my reputation. What did you say? Rory's face twisted in anger. Don't ever say I'm your teacher again. I don't know you, Brandt said coldly. Brandt, have you gone mad? Rory raged, pointing at Kiran. You hit me and humiliated me for a scammer? Brandt shook his head in disappointment at Rory, then looked at Kiran and knelt down with a thud. Brandt, what are you doing? Rory, seeing this, felt as if he was dreaming. Shuri was also stunned, turning her gaze to Kiran. Miracle Dr. York, please cure me, Brandt begged, knocking his forehead on the ground before Kiran. Brandt, have you lost your mind? Rory felt his worldview shattering as if witnessing madness. Tugging Kiran's sleeve, Shuri whispered. Has he gone mad? Should I call for psychiatric help? Kiran was amused by Shuri's comment, chuckling. Shuri's face turned beet red, filled with confusion and misunderstanding. Rory rushed over, attempting to pull Brandt up. Get up! Why kneel to a scammer? Get lost! Brandt shoved Rory away with a shout, sending him crashing into a wall, sobering him up to the reality that this was no dream. Looking at Brandt's devout manner, Rory was utterly baffled. He himself has a brain tumor, in a more critical condition than Shuri, on the verge of being untreatable. That's why he's terrified, Kiran explained, his gaze fixed on the left side of Brandt's head. Shut up, you're just talking nonsense, Rory shouted in disbelief. Miracle doctor! Truly a miracle doctor. Brandt, ecstatic, continued to kowtow to Kiran, his eyes sparkling with excitement and hope, as if he had found his lifesaver. Struck by lightning, Rory watched Brandt in shock and awe. Shuri felt as if she was witnessing a creature from another world. Chapter 643. Miracle Doctor, I indeed have a brain tumor, and it subjects me to excruciating torment day in and day out, Brandt confessed, his voice filled with a mix of desperation and hope. Over the years, I've dedicated myself to the study of brain treatment techniques, all in the hope of discovering a way to save myself. Unfortunately, I've found neither a cure nor have I been able to train a doctor or disciple capable of curing me. Upon hearing of your miraculous medical skills, I came to you immediately. My earlier accusations of forgery were deliberately contrived in hopes of meeting you, the miracle doctor. Standing to the side, Rory Yates's expression was one of sheer astonishment, as if his mind couldn't grasp the unfolding scene. Shuri covered her mouth to stifle a gasp, her heart filled with unbridled admiration for Kiran to the extent that she wished to kneel before him and plead to become his woman. The man was simply too remarkable. No, impossible. Rory, confronted with his own humiliations and feeling deeply wounded, shook his head in adamant disbelief. It was as if he had been deeply provoked. He couldn't describe the anger and grievance in his heart. Glancing at Rory with disdain, Brandt remarked, You, my worthless disciple, have brought shame upon me, driving me to despair in the medical field. What does your despair have to do with me? Rory responded angrily. Brandt laughed coldly. I refuse to take any more disciples after you because of your lack of character and competence. You've been nothing but an embarrassment. You're talking nonsense, Rory shouted back, unable to contain his frustration. All you have is jealousy, Brandt continued coldly. Thankfully, your jealousy has led me to this chance to meet the miracle doctor. Rory was so infuriated he could hardly speak, his pride thoroughly shattered, especially in front of Shuri. Then, with a gaze full of longing and desperation, Brandt once again knelt before Kiran, pleading, Miracle Doctor, please do not hesitate to save my life. I am willing to agree to any terms you set. Brandt, don't be deceived by him. He's not a miracle doctor but a scammer, Rory shouted, still agitated. In a fit of desperation, Brandt stood up and lunged at Rory, striking him. The scuffle escalated until Rory, already infuriated from the earlier slap, retaliated. The punch he landed on Brandt's abdomen elicited a pained cry from the older man, who, pale-faced and gasping for air, couldn't find the words to retaliate. "Fool!" Rory cursed, his rage boiling over as he launched another assault on Brandt, who was now a pitiful sight with a swollen, bloody face, unable to speak. Burning with rage towards Kiran, Rory accused him. "You, the grand scammer, have deceived Shuri, and now this idiot Brandt. You're the epitome of shamelessness." Shuri was dumbfounded. This Rory Yates, who acted like a gentleman in front of her, was actually like a street gangster. How could he be so cruel? "Rory Yates, you are to leave now," Shuri commanded, angered by the disrespect shown towards Kiran. "Shuri, sooner or later, this scammer will deceive you to death," Rory spat venomously as he stormed out, his scheme to expose Kiran as a fraud backfiring, instead revealing his own duplicity. This only deepened his hatred for Kiran, making him ponder revenge through his father. "Did I say you could leave?" Kiran's voice cut through the tension, breaking his silence at last. "Whether I leave or stay is none of your concern," Rory retorted, defiant despite knowing of Faber Luther's respect for Kiran. He was not afraid of Kiran. After all, his father was stronger than Faber Luther after cultivating in seclusion. "If you dare step out that door, be prepared to face death today," Kiran warned with a cold smirk. Enraged and defiant, Rory took a step towards the door, scoffing at Kiran's warning. "Do you fucking think I am scared?" "Rory Yates, you'd do well to heed Kiran's words," Shuri interjected, considering their past as classmates. Rory scoffed at their admonishment. "You're just adulterers. What right do you have to lecture me? Get lost." With that, he stormed off, pridefully leaving the room. Pausing at the door, he threw a defiant look back at Kiran. "Damn it! I'm leaving. Let's see you try to kill me." Slam! With a forceful kick, he slammed the door behind him, leaving the room in silence. She looked at Kiran in surprise. She didn't know how to deal with him. She was worried that Kiran would really kill him. Brandt looked at Kiran pitifully, still waiting for help. "Hold a press conference and sever your master-disciple relationship with Rory Yates." "I'll treat you then," Kiran said slowly. "Okay, I'll get it done right away." "Remember to tell me when and where it is," Kiran reminded. "Of course." "Of course." Brandt did not understand Kiran's intentions, but he nodded repeatedly and went out to make arrangements. Kiran's lips curled into a slight smile, his mind already racing ahead to the consequences of his plan. For Rory Yates, death seemed a fitting end, not by Kiran's hand. He didn't want to dirty his hands, but through another means he had in mind, Max Yates. Kiran was curious whether the adage about tigers not eating their cubs would hold true in this case. Moreover, he wanted the members of the Imperial Dragon to understand the madness of their vendetta against the York family. As for Brandt's press conference, Kiran was genuinely looking forward to it. A master disowning his disciple would certainly send shockwaves through circles like the Lions Club, where such relationships were sacred. Kiran anticipated the event would lead to some Lions Club members reevaluating their allegiance. Now, Kiran sat in anticipation of Brandt's press conference announcement. "Kiran, is escalating this situation wise? Rory Yates is the son of the Lions Club's president," Shuri asked, her face clouded with worry. Kiran offered a reassuring smile. "If the sky falls, I'll hold it up." Shuri fell silent, her concern evident, but she knew she couldn't offer the support Kiran could. "If I can't hold it up, can you?" Kiran asked, half joking. Shuri shook her head. "Then let's follow my plan," Kiran concluded, sitting back on the couch waiting for Brandt to execute the next step. In less than half an hour, Brandt informed Kiran that everything was set for the press conference at the Seasons Hotel. Together, they headed to the venue. Meanwhile, the news of Brandt's intention to disown his unruly disciple Rory had already begun to spread, causing a stir among the Lions Club members. Max Yates, brooding over his upcoming confrontation with Kiran, darkened further upon hearing the news. Just then, a beaten and desolate Rory Yates burst into the room. Chapter 644. "What happened now?" Max Yates asked with a gloomy mood, his face dark as he inquired. "Dad, I was beaten up," Rory Yates cried out. "Who hit you?" Max looked at his son's bruised face, feeling even more frustrated. "Brandt. He hit you?" Rage surged through Max. The thought of both him and his son being humiliated like this in a single day made him wonder if they were cursed. Brandt was deceived, and I tried to stop him. But he wouldn't listen, took my good intentions for granted, and beat me up instead. "You have to stand up for me." Ooh. Rory had already heard about Brandt's intention to disown him, which infuriated him and threatened to ruin his reputation. So, he wanted his father to intervene and then take down Kiran York, but he didn't mention Kiran to his father. Max was particularly sensitive about the issue of a master disowning his disciple, just as Kiran had anticipated. He feared a domino effect. "We're going to the press conference right now." "All right, Dad." Rory was secretly delighted, already fantasizing about his revenge. Seeing his son thanking him so earnestly made Max feel even more uncomfortable. He was already under pressure from Kiran and wanted his son to maintain a good relationship with Brandt, possibly to study abroad and save his life. He was determined not to sever ties, but rather make them come begging to him. Father and son hurried to the press conference at the Seasons Hotel. Brandt was already seated at the podium when they arrived. Kiran had gone to Manager Zhang's office for tea, uninterested in involving himself in these matters. He was only interested in Max Yates. Manager Zhang had wisely arranged for someone to keep an eye on Max and Rory's arrival. Brandt, not understanding Kiran's intentions but wanting to please him to receive treatment, greeted the journalists with a sad expression. Speaking with a whistle through his missing tooth caused by Rory, he instantly garnered sympathy from the reporters. "Mr. Brandt, how did you get injured? Why are you in such a dire state?" a reporter immediately asked. Bang! Brandt's anger flared as he slammed the table. "It was all done by my beast of a disciple." "Which disciple?" someone asked. "I know Rory Yates is Brandt's disciple. He was boasting about it just yesterday," another person said. "It was Rory Yates, that beast, who did this to me," Brandt confirmed loudly. "What?" The journalists were stunned, not expecting this turn of events. They looked at Brandt's bruised face and bloodied nose in shock. It was inconceivable that a disciple would assault his master. Feeling he had found sympathetic ears, Brandt loudly continued, "Today's press conference is partly to expose this wicked disciple for injuring me and to announce that I am disowning Rory Yates as my—" "Nonsense." Rory's furious voice cut through Brandt's speech. The journalists turned their cameras towards Rory and Max as they walked in. Seeing Rory's beaten face, they were puzzled. "Who beat who?" Max spoke up, his voice cold. "Mr. Brandt, we respect you as a foreign friend and even more as Rory's teacher. But as a foreigner, you insulted our Dragon's Land people in front of my son. As Dragon's Land people, Rory did the right thing by stopping you." "What insult to Dragon's Land people?" Brandt was taken aback. Max and Rory exchanged a glance, a gleam of joy in their eyes. They had decided in the car to turn the tables and accuse Brandt of insulting Dragon's Land people. Believing this accusation could not only undermine Brandt's reason for disowning Rory, but also incite public outrage. Encouraged by his father's nod, Rory stood up and said, "Brandt claimed that Western medicine is superior to Dragon's Land's traditional medicine and called our traditional medicine a sham. Although I'm his disciple and studied Western medicine, I am a Dragon's Land person, and I won't allow anyone to slander our traditional medicine." We argued over this, and he attacked me first because of it. Rory's face showed a mix of sadness and righteous anger. "I am the son of the Lions Club president, a Dragon's Land person. If I allowed a foreigner to slander our traditional medicine in Fawkes, it would be a betrayal of our ancestors. I absolutely cannot accept this." Rory's speech was impassioned and righteous, moving some reporters to applaud. "This is the dignity that we, the people of Dragon's Land, should have. The son of the Lions Club president did us proud, not disgracing Dragon's Land. We Dragon's Land people should not be disciples of such foreigners. Kick him out." The crowd's initial sympathy for Brandt turned into indignant rage. Brandt was stunned by the turn of events. "Rory Yates is lying." "Brandt, why would I lie?" Rory, emboldened by Kiran's absence and facing only Brandt, was fearless. "It's because you didn't study medicine properly and disrespected me, your teacher, that I disowned you." "Brandt, it's because you insulted our Dragon's Land traditional medicine that I lost respect for you." "I did not insult Dragon's Land traditional medicine. You took Manager Caden's brain scan and pointed at it, claiming the diagnosis was fake and impossible to cure, showing disbelief in traditional medicine's healing." "Brandt, that was deliberate, I was." "See, he admits it." Rory, suppressing a triumphant laugh, interrupted and shouted to the journalists, "Why insult our traditional medicine? Our Dragon's Land traditional medicine is profound and extensive. The miracle doctor, Kiran York, was treating people outside the Lachlan family's gate today, making national headlines. That's the best promotion for miraculous traditional medicine." The journalists were stirred up again, bombarding Brandt with questions. Hearing Kiran's name, Brandt turned his head, looking for Kiran to help him testify. "He's feeling guilty trying to run away," Rory shouted. The journalists swarmed forward, blocking Brandt's path. "I'm not trying to run. I'm looking for your Dr. Kiran York," Brandt said. "Don't listen to his nonsense. He's just feeling guilty," Rory yelled, not wanting Brandt to connect with Kiran. "I think it's you who's feeling guilty," Kiran's voice suddenly echoed from the doorway. Rory's heart skipped a beat. Max's face also changed instantly. How did Kiran get involved? Chapter 645. Brandt, initially sullen and angry, sprang up like a spring was placed under him as soon as he saw Kiran York. He rushed over and knelt before Kiran. "Miracle Dr. York, I wish to become your disciple." "Become a disciple?" a journalist asked in surprise, instinctively looking towards Rory Yates as if to question. Wasn't Brandt the one who looked down on traditional medicine? Rory's head grew heavy, his gaze fixed on the kneeling Brandt. Now he wants to become a disciple? "I haven't demeaned traditional medicine. This is the second time I'm kneeling before Miracle Dr. York. The first was to seek treatment and now to request to become his disciple," Brandt explained hastily to the astonished journalists. The journalists, puzzled, turned their gaze towards Rory. Rory's complexion began to change. He turned to Max Yates, seeking help from his father. Max's face darkened. Rory hadn't mentioned Kiran, which was why he had helped his son lie and distort the truth. Now, fearing Kiran's wrath and not daring to offend him, he looked at Rory and coldly demanded, "What exactly happened?" "Dad, I. Rory, not realizing his father was trying to protect him, stuttered, his eyes questioning. Smack! Max slapped Rory across the face, demanding, "Tell the truth." Rory yelped in pain, looking at his father with a sense of injustice. However, he quickly saw the reminder in his father's eyes, to tell the truth. Though confused by his father's sudden change of heart, Rory quickly confessed, "Dad, I was hit by Brandt. I just didn't want him to be deceived by Kiran." "Shut up," Brandt angrily interrupted. "You're the scammer! I'm not deceiving you!" "Kiran is really a scammer," Rory insisted desperately. Kiran, amused, watched Rory. "What have I deceived Brandt about?" "You." Rory found himself at a loss for words. "Did I deceive Shuri in treating her illness or take advantage of her?" Kiran pressed on. Rory didn't know how to respond. Miracle Dr. York is indeed a miracle doctor. His medical skills are miraculous, not deceitful. Brandt seized the opportunity to praise Kiran. Kiran continued, "I haven't deceived Brandt, nor have I deceived Shuri. But I think it's you who are deceiving everyone here, including these journalists." I'm not deceiving anyone," Rory hastily defended himself. Afraid the journalists might believe him, Brandt quickly said, "I never called traditional medicine a scam. I want to become Miracle Dr. York's disciple to learn traditional medicine." Rory, seeing Brandt's genuine intention to become a disciple, panicked. The journalists weren't fools. They saw through Rory's lies, their faces boiling with anger. "Who said traditional medicine is a scam?" "Rory, was it you? Give us a clear answer." Journalists bombarded Rory with questions, his face going through a series of changes filled with nervousness and panic, looking towards his father for help. Brandt, seeing Kiran unwilling to save or accept him as a disciple, directed his anger towards Rory. "You, a student with no knowledge of medicine, have tarnished my reputation and physically assaulted me. Today I announce that I am disowning you, severing our master-disciple relationship." Severing the master-disciple relationship. Rory, angered, retorted with pride. "Disown then, disown. You can't even cure your own illness. A waste." "What right do you have to be my teacher?" Brandt was left gasping for breath, furious at Rory's ingratitude. Kiran, however, smiled. This was the moment he was waiting for. He turned to Max. Rory Yates assaulted his own teacher, slandering him. Max's head felt twice as heavy. He feared Rory's expulsion. Now, hearing it was because of his assaulting the teacher, he became even more anxious. Turning to Rory, "Don't talk nonsense." Rory, his brain clouded by anger, didn't grasp his father's intent and loudly said, "Dad, I won't study medicine with Brandt anymore. His medical skills can't even save himself. I don't believe in him. Shut up! Smack!" Max slapped Rory again. Rory felt the pain, not just physically but also emotionally. "Dad, why are you hitting me?" "I'm your son. You." Max was at a loss for words. "A son's failure is the father's fault. Your father is right to discipline you," Kiran commented. "Kiran, shut up. It's not your place to speak," Rory raged. "Rory Yates, I've told you you're going to die today. Do you remember?" Kiran said with a sneer. "You think I'm afraid? Go ahead and kill me," Rory shouted back, his voice filled with defiance and mockery. Kiran didn't respond, but simply looked at Max with a smile that held a veiled threat. Max felt a chill down his spine at that smile, full of murderous intent. Was Kiran actually going to kill his son? "A son's failure is indeed the father's fault," Kiran repeated coldly. Max felt his heart sink. He felt he had fallen into an ice house. His entire body seemed to be frozen. He knew he was a marked man by Kiran, hoping for a high-ranking member of the Imperial Dragon to eliminate Kiran and allow him a chance at survival. And for his son, He had even greater hopes of living. But now, Kiran was forcing him to kill his own son. What was he supposed to do? How else do you expect me to discipline him? Rory challenged defiantly. Thud! Max, seeing his son seemingly courting death with his provocations, kicked Rory with frustration and anger, not caring about the consequences. He turned back to Kiran. Sir, can you spare my unworthy son? Ouch! Rory's cries of pain echoed from afar. However, his anger only intensified. Max Yates, have you lost your mind? This time, Rory even called his father by his full name in his outburst. Max was on the verge of exploding. How could his son be so obtuse, so stupid? He looked at Kiran pitifully, not wanting to kill his son. Kiran watched this charade with a smirk. Have you taught your son well? Max shook his head, his face flushing red. I haven't. It's none of your business, Rory retorted coldly. If you can't teach your son, how can you teach your disciples? Kiran pressed on. Max felt a chill. So, it was all about the Lions Club. His lips twitched uncontrollably as he pondered how to respond. What does the Lions Club's disciple matter to you? Rory, like a fool, added fuel to the fire. Max couldn't take it anymore. In a flash, he jumped over, smacking Rory until he passed out. Returning to Kiran, Max was conflicted and unsure how to proceed. Can you teach your disciples well? Kiran continued to press. Max's heart turned ice cold. The Lions Club was falling apart. I can't teach them. So what should be done? Kiran asked indifferently, his anger spreading. The Lions Club will dissolve, Max stated reluctantly in front of everyone. Chapter 646, The Lions Club is dissolved. Everyone was visibly shocked upon hearing this. And through the live broadcast, the news reached thousands of households in Fox, leaving the city in a state of shock as if a nuclear bomb had exploded underground. That Kiran had forced Max Yates to beat his own son and admit a father's failure in disciplining his child was a thunderbolt. Forcing Max to dissolve the powerful Lions Club was akin to a cataclysmic event. Kiran York, with his miraculous medical skills, seemed like a symbol of justice, immensely powerful and heart-stirringly awe-inspiring. Everyone looked at Kiran with a mix of fear and astonishment in their eyes. Why does the Lions Club have to dissolve? Kiran asked, despite knowing why. Though humiliated, Max still responded, I can't even discipline my own child properly, let alone teach my disciples well, so I have to dissolve it. Unable to discipline your son, unable to teach your disciples well. So how did you manage to be the president of the Lions Club in the past? Kiran pressed further. I was just assigned and given this power. Who gave you this power? Kiran pursued relentlessly. Initially afraid, Max, upon hearing this question, instead showed anger as if warning, don't push too far, the Imperial Dragon is powerful. Slap. Kiran retorted with a look and slapped Max, mirroring the earlier scene of Max disciplining Rory. Max bore the humiliation and pain without crying out, his body swaying slightly. Who gave you this power? Kiran continued to interrogate. Max's face kept changing, not sure why Kiran wanted him to publicly disclose the Imperial Dragon. Slap! Not receiving an answer, Kiran slapped him again. Max let out a muffled groan, his body shaking violently. Do I need to ask again? Kiran's voice was cold, like the Grim Reaper's. Thud. Max knelt directly before Kiran, ignoring the astonishment and shock of the audience, but very firmly said, I gave myself this power, refusing to admit, even when kneeling. Kiran's eyes showed disappointment. Today, he wanted to expose the Imperial Dragon to the public, to make them desperate and seek revenge openly, enjoying the process. Unfortunately, under such pressure, Max chose to take the blame alone, a disappointing outcome for Kiran. Max Yates, go back and tell the Lions Club and tell them, those who deserve to die, just wait for their death. Dare to flee and bear the consequences, Kiran concluded. Glancing at Brandt, he added, in 4 days, I'll treat your illness. Thank you, Dr. York. Brandt, overwhelmed with gratitude amidst Kiran's anger, had not expected Kiran to remember his promise. Kiran left, hands behind his back. Though he had publicly humiliated Max and dissolved the Lions Club today, he was still disappointed. The Imperial Dragon, in the hearts of Max and others, was still untouchable, a regret for Kiran. Leaving the venue, Kiran wandered the streets feeling restless and found himself entering the Dancing Flames bar. Ordering a drink, he sat in a corner, sipping quietly, contemplating who the Imperial Dragon might send here. Clearly, Cliff Locker was not a match, and he hadn't expected Lillian Yanez. It was the afternoon, and the bar was quiet with hardly any customers, which Kiran appreciated. His thoughts drifted to the Life and Death bar, reminiscing about meeting Ruby Lachlan, musing on the unpredictability of life. He decided not to meddle in the affairs of the Lachlan family anymore. Those were more of Maui's concern, something for the current Maui chieftain, Augustus Torres, and Saintess Yvonne Quinn to worry about. Clack, clack! The sound of high heels approached, signaling a new customer. Kiran looked up to see Ruby Loughlin in a short black dress, enhancing her allure under the dim bar lights. Her beauty, accentuated by the black dress, was striking. Her beautiful hair was gently tied up, revealing her snow-white neck, making her figure look even taller. Coupled with her excellent appearance, the beauty mark between her eyebrows added to her beauty. Ruby Loughlin was fair to begin with. Her black dress made her look even more beautiful and fair. Ruby didn't notice Kiran and chose a seat to sit down. Kiran didn't approach but didn't leave either. The two, in the same bar, seemed to inhabit different worlds. Kiran pretended not to see her. Ruby was unaware of Kiran's presence. About half an hour later, a man in a white suit, slim but handsome, entered the bar, his gaze sweeping across the room. Kiran's gaze happened to meet the other party's. He realized that the other party's arrogant face was filled with coldness. Kiran's first impression of the man wasn't favorable. He instinctively glanced at Ruby. Ruby saw the man and stood up, waving him over. The man, full of joy, approached, calling out, "Ruby, Miles Carter is here!" Ruby stood up, her tone soft and affectionate. "Ruby, I rushed here from Dragonsland the moment I heard of our engagement. We can finally be together," Miles Carter said with a face full of happiness, reaching out to Ruby. Kiran's gaze happened to meet the other party's. He realized that the other party's arrogant face was filled with coldness. Kiran's first impression of the man wasn't favorable. He instinctively glanced at Ruby. Ruby saw the man and stood up, waving him over. The man, full of joy, approached, calling out, "Ruby, Miles Carter is here!" Ruby stood up, her tone soft and affectionate. "Ruby, I rushed here from Dragonsland the moment I heard of our engagement. We can finally be together," Miles Carter said with a face full of happiness, reaching out to Ruby. Ruby, blushing slightly, pushed his hand away, signaling him to sit. Miles, realizing his haste, sat down across Ruby. "Tomorrow's engagement ceremony is organized by your family, the Loughlin family. But the Jiang family will not let you down. We'll make you happy." Ruby smiled and nodded. "I believe." Hearing this, Miles's happiness increased. "That's good! Let's have a drink!" Ruby suggested, pointing to the drinks. Miles nodded and picked up the drink. Ruby, on the other hand, appeared very virtuous and gentle. Every time he drank, she would fill up. She would occasionally drink herself, but she drank less. Miles looked at the beauty in front of him. His heart was soaked in honey and filled with tenderness and love. He boldly imagined that Ruby had already fallen in love with him and wanted to be with him. However, she was a little embarrassed and deliberately drank to pretend to be with him. Thinking of this, he was filled with anticipation and drank more freely. Kiran watched them but remained indifferent. The only thing he cared about was Miles, surprised to find out he was Ruby's fiancé. Thinking of the next day's engagement, he felt even less concerned about Ruby's future. They were just passers-by to each other after all. An hour later, Miles, having drunk too much, leaned back as if asleep. Ruby remained sober, playing with her phone. Buzz. Kiran's phone vibrated. He took it out and saw a call from Ruby. Curious, he wondered what she wanted. He answered the call without speaking. On the other end, Ruby said, "Kiran, I'm waiting for you at the Dancing Flames bar." Chapter 647. Kiran York remained silent, looking in the direction of Ruby Loughlin, wondering what this woman wanted from him. Having hung up the phone, Ruby appeared full of confidence. Kiran didn't immediately approach her. Instead, he set his phone to silent, placed it down, and continued to drink while observing Ruby. She was unaware of Kiran's presence in the bar. At that moment, she seemed to disregard Miles Carter in front of her, her lips curving into an enchanting smile, yet her eyes held an indescribable coldness, even cunning. Kiran couldn't figure out what this woman was up to. Half an hour passed, and Ruby frowned slightly, seemingly displeased by Kiran's absence. She called him again. Kiran answered. "Have you arrived?" Ruby asked coldly. "I'm busy." Kiran tried to lower his voice to prevent Ruby from realizing he was already inside the bar. "If you can't make it in 10 minutes, you're a murderer," Ruby stated bluntly before hanging up. Listening to the dial tone, Kiran thought if they weren't in a bar, he would never have guessed this woman could be so cold and ruthless. But this only piqued his curiosity further. He remained seated, wanting to see what she would do next. Another 10 minutes passed, and Ruby called again. This time, Kiran outright ignored the call. After 3 attempts, Ruby, visibly irritated, slammed her phone on the table, crossing her arms and shooting a sharp, icy glare at Miles Carter. Seeing Ruby's gaze, Kiran felt like he was looking at a demon, a femme fatale, her coldness reaching an extreme. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong with Ruby. After a moment of thought, he messaged Yvonne Quinn, asking her to come to the bar to meet Ruby on his behalf. Yvonne, bored at her villa in Fox Hill, welcomed the message like a source of entertainment. Without questioning further, she immediately set off for the bar. Less than half an hour later, Yvonne entered the bar. She looked like a pure college girl, dressed in a white cotton jacket, jeans, and casual shoes. Her stunning beauty and attire immediately drew everyone's attention as the bar got busier. Many were captivated by Yvonne's pure beauty, their hearts seemingly shattered. Yvonne's arrival subtly shifted the atmosphere in the bar. Ruby, sensitive to the change, locked eyes with Yvonne as she approached. Yvonne walked up to Ruby's table. Glancing at the drunken Miles, her eyebrows slightly raised. Miles had been poisoned. And it was a goo poison. "What are you doing here?" Ruby asked coldly. "My husband is busy and couldn't come, so he sent me to see what you want," Yvonne said naturally, sitting beside Miles. Husband. The word deeply stung Ruby, like an arrow piercing her heart. Her anger flared, but she eventually sneered, "You're still a virgin. How can you call Kiran husband so naturally? Isn't that a bit too low?" "Does that matter?" Yvonne asked indifferently. "Even if it doesn't matter, with your body you can't give Kiran children. Staying by his side, aren't you just wasting his time? Do you want to be the backup?" Yvonne demanded. "Leave Kiran." "Sadly, Kiran isn't interested in you," Yvonne scoffed. "Aren't you getting engaged tomorrow? Do you want to bring another man's child into your husband's house?" "You." Ruby's face turned red with anger. While listening to the women's conversation, Kiran deduced Ruby's purpose in summoning him, to confront Miles and use Kiran to get rid of him. If Kiran fell for her, he would naturally not want her to marry another, thus intervening. If he didn't fall for her, she might have other plans, especially with Miles present, making it easy to see Kiran as an enemy. In any case, her goal was to cling to him. This woman, her scheming runs deep. Announcing the engagement publicly today was probably to gain freedom, allowing her to meet Kiran. Ruby's manipulative nature further soured Kiran's impression of her. "My husband won't be interested in you, so you might as well give up on that idea," Yvonne concluded. Touching Miles's face to remove the goo poison and smiling at Ruby, "Your fiancé is quite handsome. Cherish him." As she stood to leave, Ruby called out, "Where's Kiran? Get him here!" "What if he doesn't come?" Yvonne asked with a light laugh. "If he doesn't come today, he'll be a murderer," Ruby sharply stated. "Murder who?" Yvonne's tone turned cold with amusement. "Me and Miles," Ruby pointed towards Miles, raising her hand. "Want to die? Go ahead, no one's stopping you." Yvonne turned and walked away, dismissing the threat. "Do you think I won't dare?" Ruby's hand now held a dagger, and she thrust it towards Miles. Having just been relieved of the goo poison and regaining consciousness, Miles saw the dagger coming and quickly dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. Ruby missed her target. Seeing Miles awake startled her, but she quickly recovered. "Miles, she threatened me, told me to kill you." Miles, still in shock and anger, looked at Yvonne's retreating figure. "Why would you want to kill me?" Now seeing through Ruby's act, Yvonne thought to herself how Ruby, like others from the Lachlan family, was shameless and good at putting on a show. With a light laugh, she said, "Ruby Lachlan held the knife." Now fully aware, Miles turned to Ruby, about to question her intentions. "Miles, I wish to be birds flying wing to wing with you in the sky and branches intertwined on the ground," Ruby declared dramatically. Then, with a resolved look, she turned the dagger towards her own neck. Witnessing this, Miles was paralyzed with fear. Even Yvonne hadn't expected Ruby to take her act this far. Kiran, who had been watching quietly, raised his hand, sending a silver needle into Miles's body. Attempting to intervene, Miles suddenly found himself frozen, unable to move his outstretched hand any further. Ruby, having staged the act for Miles's intervention, found herself actually hesitating when it appeared she might genuinely harm herself, standing frozen in place. Chapter 648. Ruby didn't want to die. However, at that moment she found herself in a predicament. To stab herself with the dagger would mean death. If she didn't, it would expose her ruse. She was in an awkward position. Having seen through Ruby's act, Yvonne lightly laughed and said, "Ruby Lachlan, go on, make your move. Aren't you deeply in love with Miles? You should prove your love is undying." Miles wanted to speak, but he was paralyzed, unable to utter a sound or move, watching Ruby anxiously, fearing she might genuinely attempt suicide. Ruby felt utterly embarrassed. She looked around to see if Kiran was present but couldn't spot him. Ultimately, she threw the dagger aside and rushed to embrace Miles. "Miles, what's wrong with you?" Miles' eyes darted around in panic, unable to explain his condition. Ruby feigned great concern. I'll call a doctor right now." Then, turning to Yvonne, she accused, "Did you do something to Miles?" You go ahead and kill yourself, and I'll tell you, Yvonne scorned the deceitful woman. Ruby, feeling aggrieved, glared at Yvonne and hastily made a phone call. Kiran reached out his hand, and the silver needle flew out. Ah, Miles regained his freedom and cried out. Miles! Ruby hung up the phone, pretending to be overjoyed. Miles, seeing Ruby safe, his anxiety faded, and he embraced her tightly. Ruby, I love you. You mustn't die, you mustn't. Miles stopped mid-sentence when he realized Ruby had slipped out of his arms. Ruby stepped back from Miles, her cheeks flushed with apparent disdain for his embrace. Miles, puzzled by Ruby's reaction, attempted to approach her again. Ruby Loughlin, you're willing to be lovebirds with Miles Carter, but you disdain his embrace? I think even getting into bed wouldn't be an issue, Yvonne teased the insincere Ruby. Ruby was furious, her anger boiling over as she glared at Yvonne. It's all you're doing. Looking pitifully at Miles, she accused, This woman just poisoned you, trying to kill you. Poisoned me? Miles, recalling his inability to move or speak, took it for truth and frowned. Why would she want to harm me? I didn't want to harm you. She's lying, Ruby explained pitifully. Yvonne was utterly baffled by Ruby's act, watching the clueless Miles. Why don't you ask me what poison I used? Why would I poison you? What poison did she use? Why would she poison me? Miles hurriedly asked Ruby. Ruby found herself unable to explain, certainly not about the GU poison. She used the poison of love. Unable to bear watching any longer, Kiran came over and joked. Kiran, Ruby exclaimed. Hubby, Yvonne greeted. And you are? Miles questioned Kiran angrily. Hubby, you can't let Ruby seduce you? Yvonne, playing the role of the mischief maker, deliberately clung to Kiran, acting coquettishly. Ruby's face flushed with embarrassment. I haven't tried to seduce Kiran. Seeing Kiran's handsome appearance, Miles felt a natural surge of jealousy. Who are you exactly? The man your wife deeply loves, Yvonne added fuel to the fire. Miles's face turned ashen, his head seemingly sprouting green as he cursed furiously. Bastard. Then, turning to Ruby, is it true? How could that be? Ruby's face turned from red to pale, then to anger as she looked at Kiran. Picking on my woman? Today I'll make sure you die here, Miles declared, pulling out his phone to make a call. After getting through, he spoke, I'm at the Dancing Flames bar. Someone's trying to take my woman. Bring people and take him down. With a snap, he hung up, his gaze icy as he warned Kiran, Kid, don't leave if you have guts. Kiran hadn't expected Miles Carter to be so straightforward and was amused, nodding. Rest assured, I won't leave. He walked back to his table with Yvonne following like a devoted wife. They sat down, waiting for the other party's people to arrive. The one who had taken the call was Rory Yates. He was classmates with Miles Carter in college and, despite being influential in Fox, held a flattering attitude towards Miles, a prominent figure from Dragon's Land. Hearing that Miles was being bullied in the bar, Rory, forgetting his own miserable day, immediately called Clive Krager, president of the Silver Lions Club, to go to the Dancing Flames bar for a confrontation. Rory himself drove over in a rush. Clive Krager, unaware of the situation, didn't hesitate to bring people over. In less than 10 minutes, Rory arrived. His bruised and swollen face made him stand out, causing fear among the patrons who steered clear of him. Despite his disheveled appearance, Rory quickly spotted Miles and hastened towards him. Miles was deeply engrossed in an affectionate moment with Ruby. Of course, his feelings were genuine, whereas Ruby's were feigned. Ruby intended to provoke Kiran by responding to his and Yvonne's seemingly romantic sitting together. Miles, who's trying to steal your woman? I'll help you take care of him, Rory asked angrily, exuding an intimidating aura. Miles was initially startled by Rory's appearance, mistaking him for a ghost, but recognizing him, he couldn't help but curse. Are you trying to scare me? Rory, his face more frightening than a ghost's, forced a smile and said, I've had a rough day. Let's take care of your problem first. Miles didn't bother with Rory's issues, thinking only of getting rid of Kiran to settle his grievances. He pointed towards Kiran. That bastard! Rory, his vision impaired by his injuries, couldn't see Kiran clearly but was already seething with rage. Damn! Daring to mess with Miles, looking for death. He grabbed a bottle and stormed towards Kiran full of righteous fury. Seeing Rory approach, Kiran couldn't help but laugh internally at the irony. He had initially hoped Max Yates would kill Rory, but the presence of numerous reporters at the hotel made it impractical, so he let it be. Unexpectedly, Rory was now bringing trouble to himself again. Kiran stood up, smiling. Rory Yates, you're still alive? Damn it, I'm not alive to just. Rory started, then recognizing Kiran's voice, his expression turned pale, and he halted, instinctively stepping back, the bottle in his hand trembling with fear. Young Master Yates, we're here, Clive Creegar's gruff voice sounded. Chapter 649. Clive Creegar, take this bastard down, Rory Yates commanded with a wave of his hand towards Kiran York, his face radiating authority. In Rory's eyes, the reason his father hadn't killed Kiran in the hotel earlier today was partly due to a sense of guilt and partly because it was crowded, which wasn't suitable for such an action. Otherwise, Kiran would surely be dead by now. Now, in the bar with Clive Creegar and his men present, it didn't matter. Killing Kiran wouldn't draw attention, hence Rory's commanding tone. Clive Creegar, unaware that the target was Kiran, pulled out a knife and advanced angrily, cursing. Dare to upset young Master Rory? Are you asking for death? Kill him. His men, as if injected with adrenaline, brandished their weapons and charged at Kiran. Leading the charge, Clive Creegar's menacing presence was undeniable, his face trembling with rage. Rory, smug, finally saw a chance to vent, yelling at Kiran, "Damn it. You're dead today." He greedily eyed Yvonne Quinn. "Let your woman comfort my brothers." Hearing this, Clive and his men were overjoyed, howling as they rushed forward, fantasizing about the rewards of women. "Not kneeling to me today, huh?" Kiran suddenly spoke up. "Kneel to your mother." "Kiran, sir." Clive's curse was cut short as he realized it was Kiran's voice, hastily correcting himself and coming to an abrupt halt. Oof. Moving too fast to stop, the men behind him collided into each other. Thud. Clive, unable to withstand the momentum, knelt down before Kiran. Bang! Due to the inertia, he even knocked his head on the ground in front of Kiran. With a casual remark about kneeling, the adversaries ended up bowing down, instantly making the bar's atmosphere eerie as everyone stared in bewildered shock and confusion. "Clive Creegar, can't you even walk properly?" Rory, thinking they had fallen due to the crowd, deliberately emphasized to boost morale. However, seeing it was Kiran, they all knelt one by one, like dumplings. Kiran's power had stunned them, especially after hearing how he had beaten up Chief Inspector Cliff Locker at the Lions Club today, adding to their fear. Regretting their decision to come in with weapons and lethal intentions toward Kiran, they cursed themselves for their idiocy, wishing they could slap themselves. "What are you doing?" "Get up!" Rory yelled angrily. Clive and the others cursed internally, realizing confronting Kiran was akin to courting death. Had it not been for Rory's father, Max Yates, they would have turned on Rory in an instant. In this situation, they dared not rise, becoming even more compliant. Clive, trembling, finally spoke. "Kiran, sir, please spare us. We didn't know it was you." "What if it wasn't me?" Kiran coldly retorted. Clive and the others silently bowed their heads, unable to respond. "So if it wasn't me, would there be corpses here now? And my woman to comfort you?" Kiran mockingly asked. "No, we wouldn't dare." Clive's head bobbed like a drum. "I heard Max Yates say he's dissolving the Lions Club today. Haven't you disbanded yet?" Kiran's tone suddenly shifted, pressing Clive for answers. Clive's face changed faster than a June sky, indeed having heard such, but Chief Inspector Locker had stopped them, even threatening death to deserters. Thus, none had left, many choosing to hide instead. Unexpectedly, Rory called him. Unable to ignore Rory's call, he hadn't anticipated encountering Kiran, the god of death, feeling extremely unfortunate. Kiran couldn't be bothered with them. Let Max Yates deal with Rory. "Yes," Clive sighed in relief, hastily agreeing. Rory, hearing his father would deal with him, saw it as an opportunity for his father to kill Kiran, smiling coldly at Kiran. "You're seeking death. I'll fulfill your wish." Flaunting his phone, he boasted, "I'll personally contact my father, ensuring your wish to die today comes true." Clive and the others, heads down, couldn't bear to look at Rory, thinking him a fool. To Rory, showing off and dialing his father's number was a moment of triumph. Before calling, he taunted Kiran. "Next year, this day will be your death anniversary." "Ha ha!" Laughing, he made the call. The phone connected quickly, Rory arrogantly on speaker saying, "Dad, I'm at Dancing Flames Bar. What are you doing at a bar?" "Get home and stay put." Max Yates's irritation surged upon thinking of Kiran, already troubled by his troublemaker son. "Dad, I've encountered Kiran here. You can come and kill him now. It's totally safe. Nobody knows." Rory's voice quivered with excitement, unable to contain himself. On the other end, Max felt a wave of dizziness at the mention of Kiran, urgently asking, "You've met Kiran?" "Yes. This show-off wants you to come." Clive Creegar and those losers actually knelt to him. "You should come and deal with them too." Rory added fuel to the fire, hoping his father would punish Clive and the others. Max, sweating coldly on the other end, felt overwhelmed. Was Rory in a hurry to die? "Dad, come quick. Before the bar gets crowded, Rory, afraid of missing the chance to kill Kiran, urged his father. Max's mind buzzed. He knew today might be the last day for his son. As Kiran had mentioned, Rory wouldn't survive the day. At the time, he feigned ignorance, not taking it seriously, and Kiran hadn't pursued it further. Now, a bar, an excellent place for a murder, seemed like the perfect spot for his son's end. Max's heart was frying in anxiety. "Max Yates, I have no time to waste," Kiran's cold voice interjected. Max felt his heart twist, realizing the gravity of the situation. "It's over. Dad, do you see how arrogant he is? Hurry and kill him!" "I can't wait a second longer," Rory shouted into the phone. Max's eyes hardened with resolve. "I'm on my way." With a click, he hung up. Rory laughed maniacally. "Kiran, you're dead meat today. I can't wait a second longer." Turning to Miles Carter, "Miles, just wait and watch the show today." After speaking, Rory arrogantly grabbed a bottle and started drinking, unaware that it was his last drink. Chapter 650. In less than 20 minutes, disordered footsteps sounded at the entrance as Max Yates arrived with Faber Luther and others. This time, he brought all the top fighters of the Lions Club. Determined to go all out for his son, Max was ready to risk everything. However, Rory Yates was oblivious to his father's fear and trepidation. Seeing his father arriving with such a force, he was ecstatic, believing Kiran York's death was certain. Standing up with a howl, Rory shook his bottle of wine at Kiran. "Kiran York, have a drink before you go. This is your last night alive, your last drink." Laughing maniacally after speaking, Rory tilted the bottle to his mouth and started gulping down the wine excitedly, arrogantly believing Kiran was as good as dead. Some in Max's group looked at the frenzied Rory with complex sympathy in their eyes, while others felt an indescribable emotion. This was the ultimate madness. Smash! Rory threw his wine bottle on the ground, shattering it. Looking at the sparkling shards and the red wine spilled over, he pointed at the ground. "Kiran York, if you want a quick death. Kneel, beg me." Rory's statement sent shockwaves through the Lions Club members, wondering if his brain was malfunctioning. Max was too angry to say anything. Seeing Max's significant force and many experts, Miles Carter happily stepped forward with the dignity of a prominent family member, introducing himself. "I'm Miles Carter from the Carter family in Dragon City." Hearing about the Carter family from Dragon City, one of the four great families along with the Quinn, Marsh, and QI families, known as the dominants in the medical field with assets worth billions. Max's eyes widened. Under normal circumstances, ordinary people couldn't even dream of speaking to, let alone recognize, such a significant figure. But now, with his son's life in danger, he could only nod slightly in acknowledgement. Miles Carter's extended hand hung in the air, ignored, leaving him frustrated and annoyed. He coldly withdrew his hand, proudly observing Max to gauge his strength. Unaware of his father's inner turmoil, Rory arrogantly pointed at the ground, demanding Kiran to kneel. Kiran smiled, silently looking at Max, whose face darkened. Max took a deep breath, trying to suppress his irritation and unease, looking at Kiran. "Could you please give me some face? What face?" Kiran looked at Max's swollen face. "Want me to hit you again?" Max was left speechless, wishing he could hide away in embarrassment. Rory couldn't stand it any longer, scoffing. "Kiran, it was because there were reporters today and we were in the wrong, that we let you hit us. Do you really think my father is afraid of you?" He looked at his father. "Dad, it's chaotic in the bar, just go ahead and kill him." Even arrogantly addressing Faber Luther, "Last time you didn't dare to lay a hand on Kiran. Watch how my father does it today and understand why you can't become the boss and are just an elder." Rory's excitement grew as he approached Clive Kragar, kicking him in the chest and scolding, "You're useless! Can't even be a proper dog." Clive Kragar, feeling humiliated and enraged, his face alternating between red and white, remained silent and knelt. Rory, seeing him still kneeling, mocked him further. "I'll kill you myself." He picked up a wine bottle and smashed it towards Clive's head. Bang! The loud noise wasn't from Clive's head cracking open, but from someone grabbing the bottle from Rory's hand. With his lean frame, Elder Joe Queen glared at Rory. "Young master, it's not your place to discipline my people." "What the hell are you?" Rory was surprised to see Joe Queen standing up to him in front of his father, anger boiling over. "Old man Joe, are you asking for death? My father is right here." Slap. A crisp slap cut Rory's words short. "Who the hell dares to hit me?" Rory turned angrily towards the source of the slap, only to see his furious father, Max. "Dad, you hit me again?" Rory was in disbelief. This was the second time today his father had publicly slapped him. An unprecedented event in his life, as if all the spankings due over the years had been delivered in one day. Unable to accept or face this, Rory was in shock. "Get out!" Max yelled, intending to indirectly save his son's life by telling him to leave. But Rory, unaware of his father's intentions, faced him with a fierce expression, retorting, "You want me to leave? Look at these losers kneeling to Kiran York." Turning his attention to Joe, he shouted, "You and Clive Craigar, all of you are worthless. Deserve to die." Joe remained silent, stepping back to the side. He had understood Max's intention in striking Rory. Yet, Rory remained clueless, continuing his foolish tirade. It was ludicrous to the extreme. Seeing Joe silent, Rory mistook it for fear and guilt, turning back to his father. "Kill these losers." Kill. Thump. Max landed a punch in Rory's abdomen. Spurt. Rory spat out a mouthful of blood, winded, unable to speak. Clutching his stomach, he slowly crouched down, his eyes wide with shock and anger, unable to believe his father would do this to him. Max turned to Kiran York with a face full of respectful politeness. "Mr. York, could you spare my wayward son?" "He's the one who won't spare me," Kiran York said with a smile, looking at Rory. "Mr. York, please show mercy!" Faber Luther stepped forward, picking up the crouching Rory and tossing him onto the ground amid the shattered glass. Ouch! Rory felt as if his buttocks were pierced by needles and screamed miserably. Max's heart trembled with pain, but he remained silent, waiting for Kiran York's decision. Breathing heavily, Rory looked at Max with eyes full of rage and tears, crying out, "I have no father like you. You're all worthless, all of you." "Let him die," Kiran York impatiently interrupted Rory's rant.